Vault Veritas. SCP Files. Episode 98. Restructuring. Dr. Sterling? Dr. Sterling, please. I'm not feeling well again. Dr. Sterling, my joints still ache after yesterday. I just feel hollow and sore and sick. Hello? Fine. Only way out is through, I suppose. Incident Report 7435-2. Second known incident report involving SCP-7435. Colloquial name still pending. Object class: safe. Risk assessment level: low. Reported by Dr. Sebastian Calloway, Senior Researcher. Report made May 6th, 2025. I've always been rather lukewarm on the idea of voluntary programs for the D classes. It's my opinion that since most D classes are prisoners, and usually incarcerated for highly violent or impulsive behavior, we don't really need to bother ourselves with procedures like asking nicely and sussing out who actually wants to participate in testing. It's not exactly like these inmates deserve second chances. Well, at least that's how I used to think. After the experiment involving SCP-7435 and D-63141, I'm rethinking some of those opinions. My site had been running a pilot program involving volunteer-based testing for several low-risk, tightly controlled experiments with safe-class SCPs. Mine was one of them. SCP-7435 is a flower, a subspecies of marsh marigold, to be specific. Exposure to its pollen interferes with a person's sense of identity in a series of progressive stages. Stage 1 is relatively minor. For 2 days, subjects experience symptoms similar to severe seasonal allergies, such as conjunctivitis, rhinitis, and in rare cases, mild respiratory distress. Unpleasant, but manageable. Stage 2 is where the erasure begins. Subjects begin experiencing acute retrograde amnesia. Over the course of roughly 8 hours, they gradually lose access to all autobiographical memory: who they are, where they've been, who they've loved. By the end of the stage, the subject's original identity has been completely stripped away. Stage 3 is irreversible. At that point, the affected subject undergoes a sudden cognitive restructuring and acquires the memories and identity of another nearby individual. They become fully convinced that they are this person, which usually results in attempts to locate and eliminate the imposter. So, obviously, it's a dangerous effect if it goes unnoticed. But since we already understood the progression fairly well from prior testing, I believed we could begin experimenting with damage control measures. My proposal was simple. Administer Class B amnestics before the onset of Stage 3. The treatment wouldn't restore memories that had already been lost, but it would interrupt the replacement process before a second identity could fully imprint itself onto the subject. A simple and clean containment of any possible accidental exposures. Honestly, I didn't think we'd get any volunteers for the test at all. Some D classes volunteer for things because they think it improves their chances at parole. Others think volunteering for safe class tests means they'll avoid getting assigned to something keter later on. But I didn't think anyone would willingly risk losing pieces of their own identity. So, imagine my surprise when D63141 volunteered within the very first hour. When I was called in to assess his suitability for the trial, I found him sitting quietly at the interview table with his hands folded neatly in front of him. I opened his file and read his charges aloud. Vehicular manslaughter resulting from driving under the influence. He winced at that. Then he started fidgeting with his fingernails, bending them back and forth in an anxious little rhythm. He asked whether the treatment would erase memories, parts of his identity. I told him yes. He understood the risks correctly. Then he asked whether the process could be targeted, whether certain memories could be removed before others. He told me he wanted peace. I explained that there was no way to predict which memories would deteriorate first. The longer exposure continued before intervention with amnestics, the greater the odds that the memories troubling him might disappear. But there was no way to isolate them from the rest of his identity. I warned him about personality destabilization, about the possibility of severe cognitive damage, about losing himself entirely. But as I spoke, his fidgeting only worsened. At one point, he bent the tip of a nail back so far that it tore free from the rest in a little white arc. He paused to stare at the blood welling from the corners of his exposed nail bed, looking almost confused by it, as though he'd only just realized what he'd been doing. Then he quietly informed me that any memories the procedure took from him would be worth the price. So D63141 was approved for testing. He sat unrestrained in the chamber awaiting exposure to SCP-7435, perfectly still apart from the constant fidgeting movement of his fingers. Another D-class entered in full hazmat gear, carrying one of the freshly cut flowers. D63141 accepted it carefully into his hands, cupping the petals delicately before leaning forward and inhaling deeply. A smile crossed his face, even as a thin strand of mucus slipped immediately from his left nostril. Within minutes, his eyes had turned an angry red. He began coughing harshly enough to double over in the chair, but he never stopped smiling. The first 2 days passed easily enough. We provided books and other forms of entertainment, though he complained that his eyes watered too badly to read for long. Eventually, we simply left him alone to endure the symptoms. Oddly, he seemed happier than when he had entered the testing chamber. He spent most of his time humming tuneless little melodies to himself or chatting cheerfully with the researchers through the observation glass about who he hoped to become once all the regrettable parts of him had been stripped away. Sometimes he even laughed. Stage 2 began exactly 48 hours after initial exposure. Official documentation describes this phase as a catatonic state. Honestly, that was simply the closest approximation we had available. The description is far from complete. D63141 quieted abruptly, his humming stopping mid-note. His fingers ceased their constant twitching. He stared blankly through the observation glass, mouth slightly open, eyes vacant and unfocused. But when prompted, he could still respond, slowly. Sometimes there would be delays of nearly a minute before he answered. And as the hours dragged on, his responses became increasingly inconsistent. At one point, roughly 2 hours into Stage 2, I asked him to confirm his name for the record. He opened his mouth immediately, then stopped. His brow furrowed with intense concentration. 20 seconds passed in silence before he finally looked up at me with an expression I can only describe as equal parts embarrassment and confusion. Then he admitted he could not remember, neither his designation nor his real name. After that, the deterioration became unmistakable. Where had he gone to school? He didn't know. What was the name of his childhood pet? He couldn't remember whether he'd ever owned one. Whenever questioning stopped, he would lapse immediately back into that vacant stare. And I found myself wondering how many pieces of him were actively disappearing right in front of me. I knew I could administer the amnestics at any moment. But whenever I mentioned the accident, his fingers would begin twitching again. He would wince. Sometimes his breathing became shallow and uneven. The pain was still there. That memory, the one he had volunteered to lose, remained intact. And so I let the process continue, and watched as pieces of him slipped away forever. Finally, approximately 5 hours into Stage 2, I asked him once again whether he remembered the accident. He stared at me blankly for several seconds, then asked, "What accident?" So I explained it to him. As I did, I searched his expression desperately for some flicker of recognition as I described the collision, the drinking, the death of the other driver. Instead, I watched horror slowly bloom across his face as he learned, seemingly for the first time, what he had done. "Am I," he whispered at last, "a bad person?" Then I stopped speaking and watched him slowly sink back into that vacant stare. I remember wondering how long it would take before he forgot the conversation entirely. To be safe, I gave him another 30 minutes. I thought often during that half hour, as I watched the drool gather at the corners of his mouth and drip slowly onto the front of his jumpsuit, whether I should have terminated the experiment earlier He had willingly risked the loss of his family, his childhood, his own name, all for the chance to forget. I found myself wondering how much of a person could be removed before they finally stopped hurting. Or worse, how much could be removed before the damage itself became permanent. At last, I ordered the amnestics administered. We waited several minutes for the medication to take effect. D63141 sat calmly in the observation chair, flexing his fingers and examining the places where he had chewed and picked his fingernails down to the beds, as though the injuries belonged to someone else. I asked him who he was. He said he didn't know. I asked him what he thought of himself. After a long silence, he admitted that he was no longer certain what the word self even meant. I asked what relationships he remembered. None, he answered softly. Then, after a pause, were there other people? And then, who are you? I asked him what he enjoyed doing. I don't know, he whispered. Has anything ever brought me joy? And finally, I asked him what gave his life meaning. At that, something in his expression began to fracture. I don't know. I don't know anymore. There are pieces, but they feel far away. His breathing quickened, and the questions began to flood the room. Where am I? Why am I in this chair? He gripped the sides of it suddenly, panic swelling in his voice. I don't feel right. What's happening to me? I don't want to be here. Please help me. I don't remember why I'm here. I don't remember. No. No more. I'm done. Miranda, I'm done.
There's more to the report. Keep reading.
No, I'm done, Miranda. I quit.
There's no quitting here, Scott. Finish it.
No.
What are you doing?
I want to leave. I want to go home. I don't care that I don't know where that is. I don't care what's out there, what I don't recall. I'm done. Let me out. I'm leaving.
If you're going to throw a tantrum, I will just leave you in here until you calm down.
Why can't I leave the site?
It isn't safe for you.
I don't care. I presume I'm an at-will employee, yes? Let me leave.
We'll need to re-wipe you. You will lose everything.
Fine. Do it then. Well, do it. I'm tired of this. All of it. Wipe it all. Send me on my way with nothing. It's better than being stuck here. Thinking of an excuse, Miranda? What's next since nothing is working? How many more lies will you come up with? I know, okay? I know why you keep me here. I know why you lie to me, and I'm done pretending and just going along with it all. I know I'm an SCP.
I see. Took you long enough to figure it out. Well, I wondered if you'd ever actually get there. But very well. You can consider your status officially as contained then.
I have been for a long time, haven't I?
Indeed. Well, now that we're done pretending, I can inform you that you really ought to comply with your role. There will be more reports, and you will continue to read them.
No. I refuse. I'm done with that. I'm not reading another blasted page.
Okay, Scott, let me explain something to you. Comply, like a good little SCP, and you earn benefits. Conversations with Niall, trips to the cafeteria, your own room, objects that bring you comfort. But tear up another one of my reports again, and I think you'll find out very quickly why long-term isolation studies end in total insanity. Do not test me. This is your only warning.
Vault Veritas SCP Files is a podcast inspired by the SCP Foundation. Restructuring is based on SCP-7435 by Anguished2K from the SCP Wiki located at scpwiki.com/SCP-7435. It is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 unported license. This episode featured Justin Gelner as Scott Anderson and Mitaka Angel as Dr. Miranda Sterling. It was written and edited by Leola Angel. We welcome comments. Please rate and review us, email us at vaultveritas@gmail.com, or join our Discord channel using the link in the episode description. Thanks for listening.